Welcome to the Modern History Department. My name's Richard Millward and I'm the Head of Modern History. I'm just going to give you a brief guide to the course and what we offer you if you decide to choose Modern History. So take your time to look at this course outline. And as you can see, the course is divided in 2 years, Year 1 and Year 2. Okay, we don't really call it Year 12 or Year 13. It's just first years and second years. So in the first year, you will have 2 teachers, and one teacher will take you through the England side, and that's the early Stuarts and the origins of the Civil War, and the other teacher will take you through the European side, that's democracy and dictatorships in Germany. And then in the second year, you'll most likely will have one teacher that will take you through both parts, and that's Russia and its rulers, and then the coursework. What we'll do is I'll talk to you in a bit more detail about these 3 or 4 other aspects in a bit more detail in the other slides. Now, the England side is the early Stuarts and the origins of the Civil War, and you might not think that's very modern, but in light of the changes the government's made to A-levels, where you have to cover at least 200 years of history, we've chosen to do this side to the modern course. So ultimately, we look at why did England have a civil war in 1642? You know, why did the King of England, Charles I, that you can see in the top right-hand corner, a very famous picture painted by Anthony van Dyck. Why did he choose to declare war on his Parliament? And really, that's a complex issue that essentially results in a breakdown of relations between the king and his Parliament. And really, we go right back to the origins of this, and that begins in 1603 when his father, James I, and you can see him in the top left-hand slide, he became the first king of Great Britain. And he was James VI of Scotland that is invited down and becomes the king of 2 kingdoms and brings the union together. And although he had a good reign, he sowed a lot of seeds of trouble that Charles was going to reap the problems from. And we look at this and we go through the Civil War, looking at the battles, very famous battles like Marston Moor, and the Battle of Naseby, where ultimately a very famous army emerges called the New Model Army, and that's led by a very famous person in the bottom right-hand corner, Oliver Cromwell. And Oliver Cromwell goes on to really make a name for himself as a military ruler, really. And it's only after the Civil War ends that Oliver Cromwell becomes more famous politically. And you may well know that it's Oliver Cromwell that ultimately decides to bring Charles's execution in 1649, the only king to ever be publicly beheaded. And we look at what happens after Charles dies, and England became a republic for the very first and only time. And we look at how England was run as a republic and the problems that Oliver Cromwell had there. So it's very interesting and fascinating part to English history there. Now, the European side, we focus on democracy and dictatorships in Germany, 1919 to 1963. And we look at 2 democracies, the Weimar Republic and the FRG. And we look at several dictatorships, the Kaiserreich, the Third Reich, and the GDR. So we start off with looking at Germany in 1919, where Germany became a republic for the first time, got rid of its monarchy like we did in 1649. And the Weimar Republic was created, and of course it's created at a very bad start just after the First World War, but despite despite those early problems, the Republic flourishes and goes on to become, very successful. And it seems that the Republic had recovered from its early 1919 problems. But towards the end of the 20s, we start to see the emergence of National Socialism and the rise of Hitler. And we look at how Hitler came to power in 1933, and it's again pure circumstance and an accident how Hitler is appointed in 1933, and ultimately brings about the Third Reich. Hitler declares that the Third Reich will last 1,000 years. Well, it lasted 12. And we look at how Hitler ruled Germany during that time, socially, politically, economically. And of course, you can see in the top right-hand corner the very famous photograph of Soviet troops liberating Berlin, raising that red flag over the Reichstag of a bomb-destroyed Berlin. And as you can see, if you just look and can see the zonally divided Germany in 1945, how Germany became divided by the four allies: France, Britain, America, and the Soviets. And ultimately, by 1949, two Germanies have been created. The democratic FRG, led by a guy called Konrad Adenauer, that you can see in the bottom center, and then the side by side with that, the East Germany, the GDR, led by a guy called Walter Ulbricht. And again, we look at the difference between these two Germanys. In the second year, we look at Russia and its rule as 1855 to 1964. Now, this is second year only. And it's not just a chronological go-through of all the kind of czars and communists. As you can see on the PowerPoint, we do look at the last three Romanovs. So we've got in the top left-hand corner, we've got Alexander II, the great liberator. Then we look at his son, very repressive Alexander III, and finally we look at the last Romanov, Nicholas II, and how he kind of ended 300 years of Romanov rule by disastrously taking Russia into the Second World War. And then we go on to kind of look at the first three communists, and you can see just below Nicholas II, you've got Vladimir Lenin, very famous, iconic looking figure. And then we look at his successor, not his natural successor, Joseph Stalin. And finally, we're going to look at the last of the communists, Nikita Khrushchev. Now, although we do kind of look at these people, okay, we look at themes across the whole kind of period. So we look at kind of political themes, okay, economic themes, social themes, and we ask ourselves questions like, when was it the best time to be living in Russia, okay, during the communists or during the czars, okay. We also look at who was the most repressive. Were czars more repressive, or were communists more repressive? And these are kind of themes that we look at. So we approach this from a much more thematic point of view across this whole period there. Okay, last slide. And really the coursework, okay, which is something we do in the second year, is a piece of research on Germany. So you would have already been taught about Germany, and that allows you to do an element of consolidation. So you will write a piece of extended piece of writing on an aspect of German history, okay, and that's worth 20% of the A level. Okay, that's the coursework. And finally, just to say, with regards to Germany, we also every year have a trip to Berlin for 5 days, where a group of around about 30 to 40 students always come, and we spend 5 days visiting various aspects of Berlin, where we look at in the course and the coursework as well. And it's a great city, Berlin, full of history, and we go in October. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed the slide. You've got some information from that, and I hope to see you all in September.